they say basically commitment comes from this idea of your perceived quality of alternatives. And so that's really just a fancy, goofy way of saying, like, how good of a partner could you be with if you weren't with your current partner? Right? Yeah. And so we all are walking around with this in our head. I mean, obviously, we're not nerdy enough to call it our perceived quality of alternatives, but it's like you kind of have this sense of like, if I wasn't with the person I'm with, how good could I do out there on the open market?
All right, ladies, we have the clickbaitiest of clickbait headlines that Gary told me he wanted to talk about for this week's podcast, and I know nothing about, by the way. So I'm really excited about this in the sense of I don't know what he wants to talk about. The headline is "What a Man is Really Telling You If He's Afraid of Commitment." So, Gary, what is a man really telling you if he's afraid of commitment?
So I'm glad that I got you guessing. I got you. I'm keeping you on your toes. But you said it's the clickbaitiest title. Apparently you clicked, my friend. You clicked. Oh,
yes, I did. Click and viewing. Tell me what's up.
So what's a man really telling you when he's afraid of commitment? And so, what's this about? Like when he's afraid of commitment. So everyone's heard about commitment phobia, right?
Yeah.
And so, Adam, like, what are you afraid of? Is there anything like that you have a fear of fill in the blank? Like what would it be?
Commitment, Gary. Commitment. I just got married. No. I was afraid of commitment deeply for a decent period of life. What am I afraid of? It used to be public speaking. Honestly, nothing right now. I like a lot of spiders. I guess like I'm thinking of what was Joe Rogan on that show where Fear Factor.
Fear Factor.
Where you'd be in like a box of spiders and they're crawling over my head. That's it.
That's it. That's your thing, spiders. Yeah. So actually, in preparation for this, I looked up like what are the top ones, and spiders comes in at number 6.
Really?
The number 1, like you kind of alluded to, is public speaking, which I'm sure you're not afraid of that. 2 is death, then heights, closed space. So if there's one that I'm afraid of, closed spaces. Like the idea of like being tight in something, like in a tunnel or then like something like closing down on top of you freaks me out. Right. Even though I did go whitewater rafting once, jumped through a rock and like swam through a rock out into the river out in Colorado.
Oh my God.
I don't know what possessed me to do that, but now thinking about it terrifies me.
You're breaking through your fears though, dude. There you go.
I was scared.
Do you want to do the rest of this podcast in a closet and just like see what happens? I want to see. I want to see you power.
Because there might be spiders in there, which is the 6th fear, and it's dark, which is number 7.
Ooh,
so
all right.
The thing is, I was honestly looking at the top because I wanted to look at the top 20 most common phobias in America, just to see if commitment happened to be on the list, and it's not. And yet, I think I'm sure from dealing with women in relationship coaching, you come across, and the women we deal with, they come across this fear of commitment in men all the time. And so I was just also curious, in terms of dealing with this with clients, what kind of things have you seen that are kind of typifying like the men that are commitment phobic?
Well, it's interesting you say this because I was running late to our podcast shoot because I was finishing up a mastermind session, and we had one client who, before she was in our program, she just joined a couple weeks ago. And this is a pretty normal story. Mm-hmm. She's been in a casual, what we call situationship. So it's like casual dating. And he lives an hour and a half away. And he said that that's why he's afraid of commitment. And he doesn't want to be in a relationship. So I explained to her, like, look, first off, if that really is the case, like that's a problem and that's not going to be fixed anytime soon as a starting point. Because she can't move there, whatever. Right. And B, that's likely not the problem here. So let's have a real dialogue about where this is going. And of course he was like, yeah, I'm actually really not in a stage in my life where I'm looking for something real. I'm not really looking for a relationship. And therein comes the fear of commitment. And I explained to her with welcome open arms and a digital hug. And I never said digital hug out loud. I don't think I ever will again. But I did give her a warm digital hug and let her know that she's taking 2 steps backwards right now, but they're the best 2 steps backwards she'll ever take because she's about to get rid of this just what we call emotional energy vampire. Get rid of this guy who's just sucking her energy dry so she can take 10 steps forward, 20 steps forward. Because So yeah, we just talked about that, and this guy, quote unquote, was afraid of commitment, but I certainly have other theories. I have a feeling that's where you're going with this podcast.
Yeah, and I think, you're dead on, right? It's like, so he's saying that it's about the hour and a half, right? And what the guy's saying and what's the reality are two different things. So, in this particular case, he's using distance as an excuse. There's other signs, I think, of guys who are afraid of commitment, like not introducing you to their friends, not talking about the future, not wanting to move in together, not wanting to like go on a serious vacation together. I mean, there's lots of things that kind of all show.
Not wanting to even just walk to the park for an hour during the day when sex isn't involved. Like just the basics, right? To go out to lunch together, not like have a late night booty call,
Right. Yeah. Like just not wanting to hang out and just talk,
get to know each other.
Right. Like, so, and then the guys were like, I'm afraid of commitment. And then they'll have a bunch of kind of explanations that are really just excuses.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like the setup for like, what is actually going on here? And so I think it's really useful to talk about where commitment comes from, right? So if they're afraid of commitment, like what drives commitment? And so there's a long-standing theory in relationship science about interdependence. And so where does commitment come from? They say basically commitment comes from this idea of your perceived quality of alternatives. And so that's really just a fancy, goofy way of saying like, how good of a partner could you be with if you weren't with your current partner? Right? Yeah. And so we all are walking around with this in our head. I mean, obviously we're not nerdy enough to call it our perceived quality of alternatives, but it's like, you kind of have the sense of like, if I wasn't with the person I'm with, how good could I do out there on the open market? Right?
Yeah.
And so the thing is, this perception, this level that you have about your alternatives determines how committed you're going to be. And so if you are if you're with a person that's here and your quality of alternatives fall below that person, you're thrilled, you're happy, right? I mean, you're staying in that relationship because if I lose this, I get something worse.
Dating out of your league, baby. Absolutely.
Yeah. Like,
we both acknowledge we are both dating out of our league with our
absolutely.
wives.
I don't want my wife to see this one.
Yeah, wife, Jess, don't watch this right now because you could be dating much better looking guys than me for sure.
Yeah, there's a little behind the scenes. I don't want you to see this. But
don't
it's
listen, Jess.
It's like, if you're at a job that pays you six figures, you're not, and the best you could get if you weren't at that job was a job that only paid you $50K, you're never leaving that job.
Right.
But you're at that same job that pays $100K, right? And all of a sudden you think like, well, if I left this job, I could get one that pays $200K, $300. Yeah. Guess what happens to your commitment to that $100K job?
I don't know.
You're a little shaky.
I think they call it these days quietly quitting. Like you actually don't, you just like put your slack on, but you're not actually working, type thing. That's the.
And don't you think that happens in relationships?
Quietly quitting in relationships.
A little quiet quitting of the relationship because you're starting to like get a sense of like, I might be able to do better. Right. And so this whole idea of thinking you might possibly be able to do better is really the source of commitment phobia. Now, said another way, those guys who are commitment phobic, they're labeling it in this way. That in a way is a kindness because it's not necessarily blaming anybody other than themselves. They're putting it on themselves, which, like I said, is a kindness. But really what they're saying is that they have a sneaking suspicion that they might be able to do better than you. And so they're going to keep stringing you along in a quiet quitting way, or even just it's the distance, babe. It's not you.
Yeah.
It's me. I've got this thing. And it's like, here's
I got a busy job. The job is the big one. Oh, I'm so
stage of
busy
life.
with work.
I'm not ready. I need to make more money. I need to have more money in the savings account before I can do this. It's all of those things that seem on the surface like, okay, those are some semi-reasonable explanations. Total garbage, right? It's because underneath it, it's actually this thing of like, because those same people that are commitment phobic, we both have there's the easiest solution ever. You want to cure somebody of commitment phobia, have some super hot celebrity ask them to marry them. Right? That person who's afraid of commitment, right? That guy, Scarlett Johansson says, "Hey, you want to lock this down?" Hell yeah.
Yeah, I'll do that until he realizes she's like crazy or something. I don't know. I don't know Scarlett Johansson, if she's crazy or not. But
if she's watching this, I'm sure she's delightful. I can't believe you said that about her.
Oh, I'm sure she. Hey, Scarlett, give me a call. 781. Yeah, give me a call. Let me know because. Yeah. So I really hope Jess doesn't listen to this. Jesus.
Now that we established our wives aren't watching this one, we can say whatever we want. But
perfect.
I think that's the thing is like that. You take that person who's an hour and a half away that says they're commitment phobic. There is a partner out there that they're willing to move for. There's a partner that they're willing to make more sacrifices for. There's a partner that they're willing to move heaven and earth and everything else like to be with. And they're not doing that, not because you're a bad person or anything like that. It's just that you're here and they think they can kind of get up here.
Now, the key word for those who are listening to this and thinking, oh no, like this feels terrible because this just happened to me. The key word is that they think.
Yes.
That big word there. They think they can do better. And I will just speak out of personal experience in certain times in my life. Like, I think a lot of us, which direction do I want to go in? I think that there's certain stages in life where you always are thinking the grass is greener. There's always something I can do better. I can always find someone better. But the reality is that's not always necessarily true. And actually, many times it's not true. And it's kind of a mindset that certain guys have at certain stages of their life. And then I can remember certain stages of my life where I'm just like, you know what? This whole like always shooting for the next thing, always trying to find something better, always trying to optimize is actually not a healthy way to live, and it's not making me happier. And so then there's, I think, another stage that a guy goes through. Maybe this is where a guy is like more relationship focused. Maybe it's just more realistic focus where you're just like, I want to find someone who just makes me feel really happy and who I'm aligned with and compatible with.
Yeah, and I think this is a typical guy move, right? I mean, guys, one of the things we're a lot of things. We're overconfident about pretty much everything.
Yep.
Right? We all think we're smarter than we are. We all think we're funnier than we are. We all think we're more talented. You know, any guy that's, plays the guitar thinks he's better at that than he actually is, right? I mean, we think we're better at a bunch of things. And so that whole thing about they think they can do better, I'm going to say 90% of the time they're wrong. Right. And so you kind of kindly said, well, maybe they start shifting to like more of a relationship mindset. I think that's possible, and that's a kind way to put it. I think what happens is they take enough swings and they have enough misses that they start reality keeps hitting them and like, wait, I want this and I think I can get this, and then nope. And then all of a sudden that same guy calls you back later and says, hey,
and what's going on? I'm the ghoster that came back into your life. Do you want to hang out?
He finally saw the light, huh?
And then the women will hang up and be like, Adam, why did you come back into my life? What is going on? Mm-hmm. I'll be like, well, I don't know.
He thought the grass was greener, but then he actually, finally got over the fence and realized it was just asphalt painted green, right? It wasn't even grass at all, right? And so, the guys, what they think is going on and what's actually going on, they're a little optimistic, particularly if it's, a guy who hasn't been dating that much recently. Maybe they kind of don't necessarily know, right? And so, they're just they're trying things out.
Right. Yeah, and I tell this to my clients a lot, and there's a lot of science and research that backs this up, that men, as you were saying, we tend to over-perceive interest from women, whereas women tend to under-perceive interest from men. So basically, what does that mean? Us guys, we're walking around, going on meetups, going on dates, and be like, oh my God, every girl's totally digging me. They get my swagger and all this stuff. And while you're thinking like, okay, dude, like you're okay, whatever. And then women are going around thinking like, oh, no guys are really that interested in me. I'm not really that pretty. I'm not that great. Whereas like all these guys are super into you. So realize that I don't know if it's a feature or a bug in the human brain, but that is a pretty well-known thing when it comes to dating. And having coached men and then coached women, I definitely noticed this. Like sometimes I had to be like, dude, like take it down a peg. Okay. She's not into you, man. Like just read her body language. And then with women, I have to be like, holy crap, all these guys are super into you. You're just not giving them the time of day. So I think that also kind of plays into this. Where do you think that comes from? Like men just being so overconfident and over perceiving interest from women?
I think it's an evolutionary thing. I think, for guys, they have their whole goal is to pass on and have a lot of offspring, right? And so there's not a lot of investments necessary for them to father a bunch of children. And so casting a wider net increases your chances, right? That shotgun approach, you're just playing the odds. It's actually not a terribly dumb strategy because it works, right? I mean, you shoot enough shots, right? Like some of them are going to land. And so, the guys, it's another form of overconfidence. They're going out in the world and they're seeing, every time the barista says, "Oh, here's your drink," and gives you a smile, you're like, she wants me.
Oh, so she didn't want me today? That Starbucks, that Starbucks woman, she was so into me when she smiled and said, "Here's your change."
Nope.
I didn't have change. I used a credit card. But anyways, oh my God, this is devastating to hear. So, all right.
So here's the thing. When you have a guy who's commitment phobic, what do you think they should do?
What do you think the women should do?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the best way to create desire is through distance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, take a step back so they can step forward.
Yeah. Yeah, and value is perceived. So a man, when he thinks he can do better. Okay, so now let's dive into this. Is a really good train of thought for all the women who are like, wow, there's a lot of information, but like, what do I do? Mm-hmm. Value, when it comes to mating, is truly perceived. So depending on how available you are and a number of different factors, but let's just say how available you are and how much you're giving him affection, he will set a certain value in his mind. And whether or not you think, like you are raised as women to believe that all has to do with looks, your boobs, your butt, all that stuff. Value actually, yes, that is a part of it, but actually in many ways is not. And when he thinks he can do better, he's just making a value judgment. So the question is, how do you raise your value to this guy? Well, the only way to do it that I know, and I've been doing this for a long time, is to create distance and explore other options. When you explore other options, men start to get this spidey sense in their brain, like, oh, I'm starting to lose her. Like, she must actually, and they're not actually thinking this, but this is kind of how it goes. Like, she must be a high value woman. If she's not actually willing to stick around with my BS, she's willing to go off and explore other options. Wow, maybe I misjudged her value. And then what does that do? It might bring them back and then realize what is they're missing and so on and so forth. I don't know. Did I get the quiz right?
Yeah, no, I think 100%. I think, it goes along with exactly what not to do. So what not to do when he says, oh, I'm commitment phobic, I live an hour and a half away and I don't really know. Don't do the things that you kind of want to do, which is like try to convince him, nag him, guilt trip him, coerce him, blackmail him with sex. I don't know. Like there's a whole bunch of things. Give him an ultimatum, like give him some kind of countdown clock. Like if you don't do this by this date, then I'm going to, because even if you do any of those things, even if you win and he like somehow is all of a sudden over his commitment phobia, you didn't win. You're still going to lose because why? You're always in the back of your mind, you're thinking, is he here because he wants to be here? Or is he here because I coerced, nagged, annoyed him so much that he wanted to stay? And so when the guy says, oh, listen, I'm commitment phobic, I don't really know. What I think women should do is, like you say, create some distance and say basically, no, okay, that's fine. That makes sense. But, just so you know, I hope you're going to be comfortable with this, but I'm going to then look elsewhere. Right. And you just kind of like pivot right away and be like, okay, that's fine. I'll be fine on my own. Yeah. And he's gonna be like, wait, what? Wait, you're not going to wait around?
Amen. And so with this client, like, had she been in the program for longer, she would have done this or hopefully known to do this. But the advice would have been, rather than have a whole conversation with him, be like, oh, well, I don't think you're ready, or I'm ready. I'm looking for a long-term relationship. Like, will you be in a long-term relationship with you? No, we don't do any of that stuff. Yeah. The answer is break up with him. Mm-hmm. And don't break up with him and say, oh, it's because you're not looking for a long-term relationship. Just end it with him. Be like, you know what? I don't see this as necessarily a fit. And then let him fight for you back. Yep. Like, if he doesn't fight for you, this isn't to play. And by the way, this isn't to play games. Like, look, at the end of the day, you could say, like, look, I do think the distance is an issue, and I just don't necessarily see, like, the fit here right now, and that's based on what you've been saying, and this is based on where I'm at in my life. And see if he fights for you, and if he doesn't fight for you, he's not the right fit for you.
Yeah, you got to know your value, right? Like, so he says, I'm not willing. Okay, you say, okay, great, but it's perfectly fair and fine to say, well, what I'm really looking for is someone who can be there for me. I feel like I deserve that, and so that's what I'm going to go look for.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I can do better. Basically, you don't have to come right out and say, hey, look, I deserve and can do better than this, but you need to basically say that.
Yep. And the nuance to this that I always teach in Love Accelerator is like, when you say that you're looking for a relationship in a situation like this, be very clear that when you're saying that to the guy, like in this situation where he's being commitment phobic, don't say, I'm looking for a relationship with you. I want you to be in a relationship with me. I want you to be committed to me. I want you to work harder. Just say, I'm at a stage in my life where I'm looking for something real. And based on how things have been going, I get the sense that you're not ready for that. And that's perfectly okay. But we cannot see each other anymore. So now it's kind of taking it away from like, oh, I need to be in a relationship with you, and just saying, my standards are, I'm looking for something real. I'm looking for a relationship, whether that's with you or someone else. We don't know. The jury's still out. And it positions it in a way where you are very, very high value, right? Because you're now the high value to say, I'm up here, and maybe it's with you, maybe it's not. I don't know. You still have like a lot of work to do. And if he's like, well, the distance is in the way and all this stuff. Yeah, I totally understand. The distance is away. And this is not going to be a fit. And then you actually cut the cord. And most people don't do it. They say, oh, well, we can make it work. No. Like, you actually do it.
Yeah, you got to be willing to walk away, right? And the other piece that I see women fall into in this situation is they feel guilty about advocating for themselves and advocating for what they want, right? And it's like, you feel like, oh, well, I shouldn't say that, or I shouldn't feel like, I don't want to be mean. Listen, he's telling you exactly what he wants. He's made that move. He's already declared what he's looking for. Isn't it okay for him to do that? Well, sure. That's reasonable. Like, he's being honest. That's what we want in relationships. We want people to tell us what they want. And so if he's doing that, you get to do the exact same thing. And not only get to, really have to, because you want equal, right? Equal is how that relationship is. If it's ever going to work, that's what you want. And so you don't want him to kind of make his own rules, and you're just kind of like waiting and just kind of watching and hoping. Like, you start then having this kind of relationship, and that's not what you want long term, I would guess.
Definitely not. Definitely not. I don't think anyone would want that relationship where you're hoping. And the thing is, if you're hoping and he is being commitment phobic and he just wants to keep it casual and whatever, that is man speak. Okay, ladies, like, this is just a direct translation. I got to get this on like Google Translate. Okay. That means I want to keep seeing you. I want to keep sleeping with you. I want to keep having maybe even emotional connection with you. I want to be able to even tell you my deep secrets. But I also want to get out there and see if I can do better. And
it's that can I do better part.
Back to your thing. Can I get out there and do better? And I don't want you to take this as a reflection on you. It doesn't mean that he can do better, and that's not even necessarily a healthy way to look at it. But the reality is that guys that are in that stage, or people that are at that stage, that's just what they do, right, Gary? I mean, are women guilty? I mean, I know women are guilty of this. My clients are. Can I do better? Constantly in that phase. But do you feel that men are much more guilty of this than women?
I think men are much more guilty of this than women when it comes to relationships, because I think women are factoring in multiple things. And so they can see value in some areas and not others. And they kind of do this global average where men are much more, I don't know, it's simplistic, right? And so it's easier when you're simplistic to be like, you know what, my iPhone 13 is pretty good, but the iPhone 14 has 1 extra hour of battery life. So clearly that's better. Right. And I think women are just much more thoughtful about relationships. They're much more intentional. And so they know that just that 1 extra bonus feature isn't enough to throw away what they already have. Yeah,
right. And I do think that there's, for those who are, I mean, I have certainly seen some of my clients who are maybe, I don't know if it's can I do better, but they get distracted by the wrong things that maybe don't set them up. So they're looking for certain qualities, like as in can I do better? Like, let's say they go with a guy who is just a director and they're like, oh, I think I could, there's this other guy hitting me up who is much more successful. Can I do better in that stage? And I think that there's some wisdom just having seen this time and time again and just realizing that a long-term healthy committed relationship is just all about how that person makes you feel. And do you have a really good focus on the relationship and the connection rather than the things, the shiny objects of a relationship. And once you focus on like the relationship and the connection, the feelings that you feel, and don't get distracted by, is he more attractive? Is she more attractive? Does he have more money? Does she have bigger boobs? But whatever. Once you kind of can focus on the emotional part of it, how that person makes you feel when you're around them, suddenly I think you don't get as distracted by that. I don't know. That's how I think about it.
Yeah, and I think, what you're calling shiny objects, remember that a lot of these things that we're like seeing how we want better, it's all the things that are easy to see, right? Like all those physical things, the titles, the success signals, how much money it looks like somebody has. These are all like those superficial things, super easy to see, super easy to measure. So we think that those matter more because we can pick up on those things.
Right.
But none of those things are actually what's really important long term. But the problem is all things that are important long term are below the surface. Like it's the more complicated. Like, do I feel comfortable when I'm with them? Do I like them? Do we share a lot of mutual interest? Do we laugh together? Like, what's our conversation like? How is this person going to grow over the next 5 years? Are they going to grow in a way that I'm comfortable with? Are they going to support my growth in a similar direction? Are we going to have that synergy together? Right? That's stuff that's harder to figure out, particularly because a lot of times we don't even know what to look for.
Right. And on that, like, so in Love Accelerator, like what we're looking for, we call it the lasting love formula, which is attraction, compatibility, and friendship. Let's just focus on the friendship side of this. Like when you're friends with someone, are we always thinking like, can I do better than my friend? I don't know. Like I've never, I mean, maybe I'm in a certain stage where I'm like, I think I could step up who I'm surrounding myself with, but it's not like in a one particular person. I'm not like, can I do better than my best friend? No,
well,
it's
you
like,
don't even do it like those people that you're thinking about. Like, can I do better than that? But it's like those are like the people on the periphery of like your circle, right?
Yeah. It's not
your best friend.
No.
Right? No one's thinking about like, can I trade in my best friend for a better best friend?
Yeah.
Like, would my new best friend give me a better necklace than the best friend necklace I have with my current best friend? Like, you just don't think like that. And your relationship partner should be like your best friend. And so we want to like treat them with the same level of like gravitas. Like it's that important. And so that trading in thing, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do think going back to what you're asking about, men versus women, I think women are much less likely to trade in best friends than like, I think guy best friends can shift around a little bit easier.
Interesting. We need to do, all right, maybe we didn't talk about what next week is going to be about. So how about this, Gary? How about men versus women, the differences between the two when it comes to dating and love? How's that?
All right. Yeah. Yeah. A little similarity difference, like little, men versus women, battle of the sexes kind of thing.
Ooh, that sounds good. That sounds good. I'll bring some perspective when I used to coach men because, man, that was a crazy time in my life. And you bring some of the science and we'll go from there.
All right. Sounds good.
That was awesome. Anything else you want to add to this?
No, I think I'm good. But just remember, don't listen so much to the superficial things that guys are saying about their commitment phobia and all the excuses. Because a lot of times those are like those shiny objects where it's like about distance, and you start thinking like, how can I problem solve this one problem that he says is the problem? And it's not the problem. There's other things going on.
Right. It kind of sets you free. It allows you to stop listening to someone's BS and be able to move on and actually find someone who does value you. So good stuff, Gary. That was awesome. And see y'all next week.
All right. Take care.